Mr. Terrific is undoubtedly one of the smartest characters in the entirety of DC. He's frequently mentioned as part of the top 3 smartest humans on the planet, and he has an IQ of 179, so he's pretty damn smart. But in the Injustice animated movie, all that genius level intellect doesn't show at all. I'll explain what I mean. Injustice is the famous Justice League story where Superman turns evil and becomes a dictator. And in that story, originally in the comic, Superman has a debate with Flash about gun control. But in the animated movie, they change it to Mr. Terrific arguing with Superman, and that's exactly the problem. In the movie, Mr. Terrific doesn't argue like he's one of the smartest people ever. He argues like a redditor, and that is especially a problem since the narrative frames it as if he won that argument. And to clarify, this isn't about gun policy or my political beliefs. It's about how the writing doesn't keep up with Mr. Terrific's actual intelligence and me being left ultimately disappointed. So in this scene, while Superman is halfway into becoming a dictator, he asks Mr. Terrific for more teas first so he can get rid of guns, and they both sit down for chess and the conversation begins, and immediately he makes an error by saying they could never get rid of all the guns. This is a Nirvana fallacy, trying to refuse by saying it could never be perfect, and Superman says they could get rid of most, which is true. In a fictional universe like this with strong enforcement capabilities, they could get rid of most. Mr. Terrific says just because we can doesn't mean we should, and that people would resent them. But the problem is that he says just because they can doesn't mean they should, but he doesn't explain why exactly they shouldn't. And he follows up with an emotional statement like, people would resent us, which doesn't affect the point. Imagine if everyone could have a missile launcher, and that led to deaths, so they proceed to ban missile launchers. Just because some people would hate them doesn't mean it's a wrong decision. In this scene, Mr. Terrific's intelligence is being sacrificed to serve a predetermined narrative outcome. And it's funny because I don't think Mr. Terrific on a good day would be nearly as emotional. Mr. Terrific is usually very rational and even cold, so him bringing up how people feel isn't track. He then proceeds to say some would fight.
Some would fight.
Then again, that says nothing about whether Superman is right or wrong. If banning guns save more lives, then why does it matter that some will fight? Unless he's suggesting that some people getting mad is comparable to the lives being saved. This is an appeal to consequences. But just because a policy causes backlash doesn't mean it's not effective or logically sound. Superman then tells Mr. Terrific to think of the lives they save, and immediately Mr. Terrific says,
Smoking. What? Cigarettes kill far more. You want to save lives? Jail every smoker.
which is very disappointing because he doesn't actually answer Superman's request. Instead, he pivots to smoking and says cigarettes kill far more, which is true, but this is a false comparison. And the next thing he says exposes why. He says people keep smoking even though they know it's killing them. That shows the fundamental difference between cigarettes and gun. Most people don't take cigarettes with the intent to harm themselves. Meanwhile, a gun is designed for harm and nothing else. The intent behind the user is not the same. The design and the function of both tools are not the same. And even if we wanted to focus solely on the effect, one of those tools affects only the user, the other affects others. He then pivots to traffic fatality, conveniently ignoring intent and design once again, and focuses solely on effect. He then says Superman should lock up everyone who leaves a dangerous dog unchained, and again ignores intent. And that particular example is very weak since people do face repercussions for neglect. Not necessarily jail, but there are consequences, and even consequences for the animals sometimes, so this was very random. And lastly, he says we execute anyone who doesn't recycle, and this time he doesn't even bother to make the correlation between not recycling and death rates. Yes, not recycling is wasteful and damages the environment, but guns end life in an instant. He knows this. Now what Mr. Terrific is doing is called a slippery slope, which is an argument that assumes a relatively small first step will inevitably lead to a chain of events, culminating in some significant negative outcome, without providing evidence for that connection, which is why he ends up with saying something extreme like executing people who don't recycle, without making the connection. He's trying to say what will you ban next, to make the point that Superman is being controlling, and if he's willing to ban guns, he should be willing to ban anything with a negative effect. But there is more to the sloppiness of his talking point.
You want to save lives? Jail every smoker and imprison anyone who speeds. Traffic fatalities are huge. Lock up everyone who leaves a dangerous dog unchained. Finally, we kill anyone who doesn't recycle.
Notice how Superman only said he wanted to ban guns, but when he wants to counter using smoking, he says if you want to save lives, jail every smoker, instead of banning smoke. There's a huge difference between banning smoke and jailing every smoker. I'm sure he knows this. His statement is factually false, because jailing smokers isn't what saves lives if cigarettes are still in circulation. It makes no sense to jail people for doing something that is legal at the moment. So why does he change the punishment? He does the same thing when he says jail everyone who speeds, as if there aren't already penalties for speeding. Same with neglecting a dangerous dog. And finally, he says execute people who don't recycle. This is a type of rhetorical inflation, from banning to jailing to execution. He changes the punishment disproportionately. I would expect this from a random online user, but not the third smartest person on the planet. He should be able to argue proportionately. Now I'm going to talk about what they both should have said, starting with Superman. And for the record, I hate Injustice Superman. He's quite annoying. After Mr. Terrific brought up smoking, to make it more interesting, Superman should have followed by saying, then we'll ban cigarettes too, because that is consistent with what Superman is trying to do. If banning something saves this many lives, then it's worth it to him. Calling him controlling doesn't really dispute the point. If he had said that, then Mr. Terrific would have had to explain why it's worth allowing smokers to smoke if it kills so many people. Chances are he wouldn't be able to, considering his sentiments towards smokers already.
Cigarettes kill far more. People keep smoking even though they know it's killing them. Their families can only watch them die.
And that brings us to what Mr. Terrific should have said. The first actually good argument he could have made is a little complex and wouldn't appeal to Superman at all, which is that people have a right to defend themselves where heroes like them or the government can't. And that can get very subjective, plus he wouldn't be able to refute the point of saving lives. So the other thing he should have done was attack Superman's authority, ask why he gets to determine what to ban, who checks him if he steps out of line, and what if someone disagrees with him. Institutions and governments of individual countries already determine what laws should be in place for their people, and they usually have systems in place to ensure power is not abused to the point of dictatorship. It would have been better if he took this angle, since that's part of the point of the story. Superman thinking he's right about everything and not knowing when to stop, deciding who gets to live or die. If he challenges authority to decide what is good for people, Superman would likely have no answer and let his ego take over. But this isn't just important because Mr. Terrific is arguing like this, but because the narrative makes it look as if he won. But he didn't, not even close. So overall, this was not good writing, and I have nothing against the Injustice series. I think it's interesting enough, but things could have been done better, and this is one of those themes. And like I said earlier, I know the dialogue was originally meant for the Flash, and that would make more sense as Barry is young, often emotional, and definitely not as smart as Mr. Terrific. But if you're going to increase the IQ of the speaker by that much, then you have to improve the arguments and the delivery of the arguments. And let me make this clear again, this is not a political video. I'm simply analyzing the efficiency of the arguments. It doesn't matter what they were arguing. What's important is that a character like Mr. Terrific is above this level of debate, so they should have either kept it as Flash or made the argument better. This is a case of writers not knowing how to write a character smarter than them, and Mr. Terrific deserves more than this. If you enjoyed this video at all, please ensure to like, share, and subscribe. Let me know what you think about the video, and let me know what you think about this scene. Goodbye and God bless.